Welcome to the lecture on elements of cost. So, in this lecture we will discuss about different types of cost. Cost is very important for the organization because there are different type of expenses which is incurred by the organization. These expenses are basically categorized under different names, and finally depending upon the objective of the organization will set the cost of the asset or the selling price of the unit piece of the asset or the product, and in that way it will try to have the income as per its own plan. So, let us discuss about different types of cost which is incurred. Now, coming to the first type of cost relating to the manufacturing of components, let us first discuss about the costs. If we look in the manufacturing aspect, manufacturing of any component. So, in that basically you have manufacturing type of cost and non-manufacturing type of cost. Now, in that basically in the manufacturing cost, basically you use either the direct material, direct labor, cost, and manufacturing overhead. Now, in the direct material cost, the cost of the materials which are directly used for the production of any product and which is clearly visible. So, like the cost of rubber or cost of steel for making a pen, the cost of metals used for the ball, all these are the direct material cost because they are the materials cost which is visible, and that is why they are known as direct material cost. Similarly, direct labor cost, all the cost on the labor who are directly involved with the production of the product. So, that is known as direct labor cost. Then comes manufacturing overhead. Now, apart from that there are many kind of cost which are going behind the scene, that is used to make the product. So, that is known as manufacturing overhead. The costs like the heat and light, the electricity used to make the product, the depreciation, all that of the machines, these things are under the manufacturing overhead type of cost, because basically these are all the cost except the direct material cost and the direct labor cost which are used for the manufacturing of the component. They are known as manufacturing overhead type of cost because they are all dealing with the manufacturing of the component. Then comes non-manufacturing costs. Now, apart from the manufacturing costs, there are also non-manufacturing costs, the costs which are incurred not directly related to the manufacturing portion. So, the costs are like costs associated with marketing and advertising, sales promotions, all these type of costs, they are under this non manufacturing costs, because these costs are required to be put in a different category. They are not directly related to the manufacturing of the product, however, these are required for selling the product, and selling is also an integral part, because it is the objective of the organization to sell the product. Similarly, you have administrative expenses. So, all the administrative expenses, you have recruitments, you have lot of recruitment of the persons at different administrative levels, meetings, all that expenses which are going on, these are under the category of administrative expenses. Then you have also non manufacturing overhead. So, all the other costs like heat, light, electricity, depreciation of machines, which are not an integral part of the manufacturing unit, those costs are coming under this non manufacturing overheads. So, all the equipments which are there in the manufacturing section, which are dealing with the production of the product, their depreciation and the premium paid on them, interest, all these are coming under manufacturing overhead, and all of those equipments which are used in the administrative and the marketing divisions, they are under the non manufacturing overhead. Next is period cost and product cost. Now, when we talk about the financial statement perspective, we want to make the financial statements, then the costs can be categorized under two broad names, and these are period costs and product costs. Now, period costs are those costs which are better to be expressed when in a certain period. So, like the depreciation, taxes, all these type of expenses which are better to be put in a period, so that is known as a period cost. Basically, in financial terms, these costs are treated as expenses. So, whenever these costs are incurred, it is felt that the expense has already been done. So, then we subtract these costs from the statement which we prepare. Then we have product costs. Now, these are the costs which are better to be expressed related to the product. So, all the cost related to the direct labor cost or direct material cost, it is better to express them for the product, because they are ultimately going to be linked with the production of the product, and that is why they are known as product cost. The difference between the period cost and product cost is that while this cost is treated as expenses incurred, so far the product is not being sold, this cost is treated as an asset. So, even if the product is made, the cost has been incurred on making the product, this cost is just like an asset till the product is going into the market and it is being sold. So, this is the difference between period cost and product cost. Now, let us see the behavior of some of the costs. So, on the basis of cost behavior, there are costs known as fixed cost and variable cost. So, let us see fixed cost and variable cost. Now, this fixed cost is that type of cost which remains fixed till the products, I mean when we define certain production capacity, for that particular capacity this cost remains fixed irrespective of how many units of product is being produced up to its capacity. So, fixed cost basically remains constant does not depend on units produced. So, the rent on the building, depreciation of the building, depreciation of the equipment being used, all these expenses are coming under the fixed cost, because they have nothing to do with the production units produced. Administrative expenses, expenses on the sales and marketing, advertisements, they have nothing to do with the units produced. So, these expenses are under the category of fixed cost. Then comes the variable cost. Variable cost is the cost which varies with the amount of units produced. So, as the number of units are produced, this cost will go on increasing. So, it varies with units produced. So, direct material cost and direct labor cost, these are the examples of variable cost, because as the number of units will be produced, these direct material and direct labor cost will be increased, and on the other side if we produce less number of units, this type of cost like direct material or direct labor cost, they basically are accordingly decreasing. So, what we see is that this fixed cost per unit, that basically changes. So, fixed cost per unit item produced is a constant is a variable quantity. As we vary the number of quantity produced, this fixed cost per unit of item produced will be varying, while the variable cost per unit is a fixed quantity. Because per unit cost is basically a fixed amount and it goes on changing as the number of units produced is changed. Now, another cost which comes in between is the mixed cost. Mixed cost is the another variety of cost which is adjusted by the cost behavior. So, mixed cost means it has both component, a fixed component as well as a variable cost component. Now, let us see the depreciation of any machine. The machine will depreciate at its own rate, but larger the machine will be used. If the machine is used beyond its capacity, then certainly its depreciation will be more. So, it has a fixed percentage as well as a variable part. So, that is why this type of cost is known as mixed cost. So, on the basis of cost behaviors, we categorize them in the category of fixed cost, variable cost and mixed type of cost. Now, once you have got the cost, then you have average unit cost. So, average unit cost is based on, once you have got the total cost, then to ascertain the cost which has been incurred on the product, you express them in terms of average unit cost. So, what is the cost incurred and how many units are produced? Based on that, you calculate the value of average unit cost. Now, you have another cost, that is incremental cost. Sometimes now there are different names to this incremental cost. You can have the name as a differential cost also at some point of time. Now, this cost refers to the cost when you try to increase the production by unit quantity. So, the amount of cost which you incur for producing one extra unit, that is known as incremental cost. So, suppose your production capacity is 3000 units and it is expected that it has to make another 200 units above than the normal values. In that case, if for making the 100 units you are incurring something close to 5000 rupees, in that case 50 rupees per unit is the incremental cost. So, this incremental cost is the cost which is used for making one extra unit. Then comes opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost is the cost that is basically associated with the situation when you have alternative course of action, and when you choose to go for the alternative course of action, in that time you have to compromise on certain grounds. So, you have to forego certain benefits, and this is known as the opportunity cost. Suppose for example, if you are studying and while studying you are also doing some part time jobs. Now, in the study period you got a break and you want to go to meet your parents. So, during the break you have to take the leave from your employer who gives you rupees 500 every week. Now, the employer, if he tells you to go, you will be losing rupees 500 for the week you want to go during the vacation. So, this type of cost is known as opportunity cost, because you are losing this opportunity to earn rupees 500 for a week and you are going for other place, other destination. So, these type of costs are coming under the opportunity cost. Another cost which is also used when we do the economic analysis is the cost like sunk cost. We have already discussed about it. Sunk cost is that cost which has been incurred in the past and cannot be recovered. So, these are the costs. Basically it is said that since they are incurred in the past, they are not relevant for any kind of decision making. So, let us write the definition of certain type of cost. So, you have sunk cost the cost which has been incurred in past and can't be recovered. So, these costs do not affect the decision making in future. Now, we can have the example of this. Suppose we have a car which we have to sell. So, we are going for the advertising our car. Now, while going for advertising, if we feel and if we are faced with a circumstance in which some of the part of the car is not working and you have to repair it. So, suppose you have incurred some cost on the car. Now, you have gone to sell it and you are able to sell the car. The value of the car was suppose evaluated as rupees 2 lakh and you were able to sell your car, but in between you had to spend some amount, say rupees 5,000 on car while going for selling your car. So, the car got breakdown and you had to spend some amount. The car was evaluated and sold. Now, you must be thinking of the amount which you have incurred on it, but you cannot do with it. You cannot do anything with this amount which is spent. So, basically this amount is known as the cost incurred of rupees 5,000 is sunk cost. So, because now you cannot, it is not going to be recovered, it is not going to affect the decision making of selling the car, you have to anyway sell it. So, this cost which you have incurred is known as a sunk cost. Then we can also come across few cost terms known as, suppose, first cost of the asset. When we deal with this term, first cost of the asset means the cost on those assets which are basically used by the industry for the first time while setting up the industry. So, all the capitalized type of assets, the cost incurred on those assets basically are under the category of first cost of asset. So, in this basically setting up of equipments, transportation, all the equipments which is coming for installation, all the costs which are there at the initiation of the organization of the plant, all these costs are under the fixed cost of the asset. So, it is basically, since it is the first cost of the asset, because it is all done before the start of the production, before the start of the work which will produce the units. So, that is why it is under the first cost of the asset. Contrary to that, there is a cost sometimes known as operation and maintenance cost. Now, this is the cost which is basically dealing with the cost while running the production. When the production run is going on, at that time all the kind of cost which are incurred, they are under this operation and maintenance costs. So, in that the expenses on the electricity, light, and also the depreciation, insurance premium, all these costs, they are under the operation and maintenance cost. So, this way we can see that we come across to different types of costs in the company. We defined the opportunity cost as the cost which is foregone while choosing an alternative course of action. As we had discussed earlier during the replacement analysis, that when we have alternative available to us, in that case when we talk about some of the cost which basically some of the benefits which basically we are devoid of, if we do not take any other option, these costs are coming under the opportunity cost, because that we are losing by selecting an alternative course of action. So, these costs are under the opportunity cost. So, basically we have dealt with different types of cost, and when we can have a problem solving on this, we can see that how we categorize these costs under the different categories. Based on that, you can have the cost in terms of fixed and variable cost, and these two costs are used to see that what will be the total cost on the product, and based on that you can set the price of the product which you have to sell, that will produce you income, and based on that you can earn the profit once you sell it beyond certain point, and that will be a break even point that we will discuss in our next class. Thank you.